Hello and welcome to the latest episode of It Stinks, the Critic podcast. Today we're going over Season 1, Episode 10, Dr. J. And joining me to go over this episode is writer, artist, and cultural critic who can regularly be seen in the pages or the digital pages of Jacobin, and the editor of Locust Review. It's Alexander Billet. Alex, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay, considering everything. How are you doing, man?
I'm hanging in there. Yeah. Honestly, this podcast takes up a decent amount of my time, so it's almost like having a job.
Good. Yeah. Honestly,
Yeah.
it's kind of amazing how I remember thinking for years and years, if I were just unemployed and on unemployment, I would have all the time I need to work on my writing. And now I'm walking around the apartment completely unemployed and saying, oh, well, this actually really sucks. I kind of miss being exploited sometimes.
Yeah.
Like I have no idea what to do with myself. I'm a complete loose ends, and I know I'm far from alone in that respect during these circumstances.
Yeah. So this is probably gonna come up at some point during the episode or during while we're recording this. But yeah, I basically know you through the Democratic Socialists of America. We're both members of the LA chapter. I unfortunately have not been very involved with it for a while. I've just gotten too busy with other things, but I'm still very much, supportive of everything they're doing. And as we're recording this, it is May 1st, International Workers' Day.
Indeed.
Yeah, you were just telling me about something you were doing today. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. I mean, if I'm being perfectly honest, I've been pretty out of the loop too over the past couple of months, just because it's like, what does it mean to be part of a socialist organization during a time of quarantine? I mean, and unpacking that a little bit, it's like this pandemic has completely exposed so much that's completely inequitable about capitalism, right? From the lack of any decent healthcare in the United States through everyone getting laid off and having no clue what they're going to do, just like the feeble state of unemployment insurance in the United States. So on and so forth. And so it's just, I think DSA generally nationally, I know, has had to sort of wrap its head around this. But the other thing is, like, as socialists, our sense of power comes from being able to be physically together. Like when you're on a picket line or you're at a demonstration, you need masses of people. This is one of the defining features of socialism. So all of a sudden we have this pandemic coming up. This is saying, no, everyone needs to be separate, stay in your homes, stay 6 feet away from each other, wear masks, all that type of stuff. And so what does that mean for a socialist group? It's been really weird. Like for me, I've had to wrap my head around this. And I know DSA LA also has had to do that, like put a lot of, try to figure out, doing meetings on Zoom and things like that. How do you do protests nowadays?
Yeah.
So one of the things the car protest seems to be becoming a really common thing right now. And it's really great. And of course it kind of, there's a drawback to that, a downside, which is that if you don't have a car, you can't really participate. But we're in LA, everyone has a car, right?
Right.
Plenty of people don't, but it's such a car heavy city that actually car protests become kind of strangely effective. Today there was a demonstration, a car protest in front of Eric Garcetti's house. Probably better stated to say it was on his block, because we literally just drove around his block in the Mid-Wilshire area. With signs and honking and, saying that it's kind of criminal that people still had to pay rent during this. So it was demanding a rent freeze for the duration of the pandemic, really, at the very least until the stay in place or the shelter in place ordinance is lifted.
Yeah, that's awesome that you did that. Yeah, like I remember earlier this year, I was thinking like, oh man, I haven't, been involved in any DSA activities or anything like that. What can I do? And I was thinking like, May 1st. There's always a march on May 1st. I can participate in that. Because I actually did participate in the march, I want to say maybe 2018, a couple of years ago, and that that was a lot of fun doing that. I kind of looked forward to getting to do that again, but oh well.
It's difficult for folks to plug themselves in right now, just because of all the reasons I mentioned earlier. And it's a weird irony. Yeah, right at the time when I think people need to be mobilizing and working together as much as they can, the most fundamental obstacles are placed in front of that. So we just got to be creative, honestly, and try to figure out how to do it next. Because I do agree with all the commentators who are saying after this pandemic is over, nothing's really going to go back to. I mean, like the pandemic will end, but I don't think what we go back to will be anything we really recognize as normal. So we're going to have some interesting things to try to figure out.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how the world changes or, stays changed from this whole pandemic experience after like quarantine ends and we can all go outside again. Like, hopefully people are at least like more cognizant of like how important a lot of blue collar workers are, like a lot of like, the people that bag our groceries and deliver our food and stuff like that.
Absolutely. I completely agree. I mean, one of the main sort of events today that's going on May 1st is, workers at Amazon, Instacart, Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, Target, and I think there's a few other chains that aren't coming to me right now are all, there's strikes at locations and all of those companies across the country. And it feels a little, there have been union drives and strikes at I think all of these companies at one time or another, but coordinating them at a time like this when, as you said, it's becoming so obvious how much we rely on that labor, that feels significant and important. And is it enough? I mean, no. I mean, the struggle is going to continue after this, but there's a sense of if that type of solidarity and that type of feeling and recognition of power can keep growing through all of this, then I think we aren't going to be completely fucked by the end of this pandemic. I mean, it's probably the best you can say for right now.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, rebelling against our corporate masters, the episode we're looking at today is kind of centers around the giant corporate master that we have in The Critic. Of course, I'm talking about Duke Phillips.
Yep.
So just to give the synopsis of this episode here. While at the Cannes Film Festival, Jay comes to the rescue when Duke is diagnosed with a terminal illness.
Yep.
The whole thing kind of is kind of a broad parody of the movie Lorenzo's Oil, which I vaguely remember from the 90s. Is it Susan Sarandon and Nick Nolte?
Nick Nolte, right? Yeah. I also vaguely remember it. I remember I watched it all the way through in the 90s, but I was way too young to really remember anything other than just the broad strokes. Lorenzo, the 8-year-old kid, has this awful terminal illness. Can't even remember what it is, but they basically, the parents, despite neither of them having a medical background, somehow discover some sort of miracle treatment to make sure that he stays alive.
I just remember there's lots of scenes, just these really harrowing scenes of the boy, like something about his affliction means he can't like swallow correctly, so he like chokes a lot, and there's all these scenes of him like choking and fighting for breath and like almost seizing, and it's really harrowing.
God. Yeah, I don't remember that part. Oh God, that sounds awful.
Well, luckily we don't get that in this episode.
No, we just get like a weird megalomaniacal billionaire who still somehow holds on to his old hayseed Kentucky roots. Who is the pinnacle of physical fitness throughout the whole series, somehow degenerating. And the interesting thing is, I don't know if it's just because they've made Duke such a throughout the whole series, Duke is just like, skating on that right at the border between reprehensible and completely ridiculous. So making him likable and someone that you root for in this is actually kind of, although now that I hear myself talk out loud, it's not so much him you're rooting for, it's just you're rooting for Jay, because Jay has some sort of misplaced affection for Duke throughout the whole thing. It's pretty it's a pretty interesting episode in that respect, because you end up rooting for someone who is, as I described for Duke, he's just,
Yeah, like Jay almost, I think, kind of acts as Duke's conscience. Like he has to kind of convince Duke that like life is worth fighting for and that he shouldn't just lay down and die at one point.
Yeah, exactly. He's kind of. Yeah, he kind of becomes Duke's Jiminy Cricket in this.
Yeah.
It's a cool little moment, because I think it does allow actually for some really great moments that kind of skewer how ridiculous Duke's whole existence is, frankly.
Yeah.
And, they go through. Well, I don't know. I mean, do we want to go through the full episode sort of from moment one to the final moment to just sort of dissect it a little bit? I mean, there's a lot of great moments in it.
That's generally what I like to do on this show. So
yeah, I heard from other ones. I heard from listening to the other episodes. I didn't know if that's
cool
something you wanted to stick with this, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is my first podcast. I'm okay with the format being a little bit liquid. So, still kind of figuring out that sweet spot. But yeah, so let's start at the beginning. We actually begin at the Cannes Film Festival. So Jay is basically hosting his show, and we get this, the first joke of the episode is, he says he sees Holly Hunter talking to Marlee Matlin.
Hello, I'm Jay Sherman, coming to you live from the Cannes Film Festival. All the stars are here. There's Holly Hunter talking to Marlee Matlin. Keep it down, you two.
Of course, the joke being Marlee Matlin is deaf.
Yeah, and Holly Hunter played a mute woman in the piano right before it. So there was something. It is one of those moments that I do think kind of, as I'm sure, as I know has been mentioned several times on this show, the Critic was only on for just like a short moment, like 2 seasons in the early to mid 90s. And there's something about a lot of the jokes, including this one, that clearly folks only of our kind of age group get, or older. Like, it occurred to me while watching this, I'm like, how many Zoomers know who Marlee Matlin is?
Yeah.
And there's something very specific Gen X about a lot of the Critic that I know has been mentioned plenty of times on here. But that's definitely one of those moments that kind of comes up.
Well, yeah, and it definitely also plays to like people who know movies and care about movies, to kind of a high degree, which the episode that we did before this, L.A.J., the one about Jay going to Los Angeles to be a screenwriter, can you believe that people in Minnesota or Wisconsin couldn't relate to that?
Yeah, I mean, they even take a dig at like Middle America hayseeds. At that one point during the flight, when a farmer's saying, "Oh, these are all the people that do our great movies and TV shows, award shows where award shows win awards. Yeah. Get me my gun." And they take like this dig at Middle America, but it's also saying that like that's also one of the sort of tricky things about the Critic. They never take a side. They also completely admit that yes, Hollywood is a complete farce of it. It's a parody of itself. It's incepted itself so many times that you don't know where the reality ends or begins, or if there's any left in there.
Yeah, and Jay is definitely like the butt of the joke much more often than he isn't. So
right. I mean, that's the thing. He seems to see through all of the spectacle of Hollywood so well, but he never wins from knowing that. You know?
It doesn't really pay off for him.
No, it never does. Yes, film is nothing but cynical cash grabs nowadays, at least in the mainstream. But what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
That's kind of, and yes, you as a film critic have all of the weaponry that enables you to dissect that and dissemble it and expose to people just how much their emotional selves are being used against them. Does it ever work?
Well,
never, not once, because everyone's so complicit in it already, and they feel like they gain something from it. And that's the interesting thing about the Cannes Film Festival. I remember seeing the sequences in Cannes during this episode, and like a lot of lefties who are also into art and film. I love Jean-Luc Godard, and back in the 60s. During the uprising in France in 1968, he held a press conference where he basically said to the Cannes Film Festival, "None of what we do here matters right now." Like just saying that this is stupid. This is nothing but a bunch of puff and spectacle. And it doesn't really, the real interesting consequential shit is being done by the students and workers out on the streets throwing rocks at cops. And well, joke's on us. Cannes is still going years later. Godard is still making films, but
that's amazing. He's still at it.
Yeah.
But that period, like that was when he made La Chinoise, right?
Yeah, La Chinoise. He had just made, I think Tout va bien came a couple years later. And it's like this great sort of notion of filmmaking that I think we lost for a certain amount of time, a few decades, or at least just got obscured up until maybe Sorry to Bother You came out. This idea of using film against itself that shows it's the artifice of film and how that artifice is kind of complicit with what's going on. Now, Jay Sherman, is not a Marxist. He's not, but he's someone who loves like that sort of like simplistic beauty that someone like Godard would employ in film to sort of turn it against itself. And that kind of, now what is that? I guess that using some of that to kind of frame the way in which the joke is always on Jay is interesting, because you can, in some ways it sort of explains how we got to the moment that created The Critic. In some ways, The Critic, the show, like how this sort of, the decline of the 60s and 70s sort of put us in that place where nothing really, it's the end of history, all of that type of stuff, convincing us that nothing really matters anymore. And therefore, the more you can explain something, the more shut out of it you're going to be, the more shut out from participation in society you're going to be. Now, what is that? Is there some sort of, does that mean there's some sort of hidden symbolism in the scene where he accidentally gets drunk with Marty? Maybe. I don't know. I mean, who is whiny Jacques? Who's inside who's inside the costume of the wine bottle? Whiny Jacques is here and he needs to sit down.
Right.
There's something, I mean, I'm never one of those people who wants to disassemble or deconstruct things too much, but there is also kind of like, how do you get to the joyful, almost nihilistic cynicism of The Critic? Well, there's a few things that are undeliberately hidden in Jay Sherman's stature as a critic that kind of explain it, like he finds himself constantly swimming in this morass of cynical cash grab stupidity. Constantly.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the central conceit of the show, is that like Jay is a critic who loves film, and he loves like he appreciates film as an art form, but he's stuck reviewing like, you know, sequels and remakes and, you know, the worst that Hollywood produces.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. And it's just like, I mean, it's interesting that there were people in Hollywood making this at the time, you know, Al Jean and Mike Reese, you know, they were already veterans by that point, and they were they were very self-aware to do something like this. I mean, you see it throughout the whole series, I think. And
they're not even afraid to like make jokes at the expense of the network that their show is on. Like, I mean, it happens in both seasons. They make fun of ABC and they make fun of Fox.
Yeah. Stay tuned to Fox, where I remember some of the outros when I was first watching The Critic, when it was still on before it had been canceled during the second season when it was on Fox, and some of the bumps in between, you know, when they would go to commercial, and you just hear John Lovitz's voice say, "Stay tuned to Fox, where we can say boobies."
Yeah.
And clearly something in my 12-year-old brain thought that was so hilarious and subversive.
I mean, we definitely, like, you appreciate it on a certain level, you know, when you're a child, you're like, yeah, he said boobies.
Exactly.
But then you don't understand until you're older that, like, oh, he's making fun of people who think it's funny that he said the word boobies.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. Peak postmodernism.
Yeah.
So there's also something interesting, like in that scene with Jay and Marty getting drunk, where you have the waiter there saying, "The tourists have ruined Cannes," and then he flashes back to when things were simpler.
When I was a boy, the people were friendly, and the beach was beautiful.
Monsieur Hitler, my kite won't fly.
You need a tail. Use mine armband.
Oh, Adolf.
And then, I guess it kind of reveals that the waiter is like a neo-Nazi, I guess.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. He like at the end of his little fantasy flashback, he goes, "Jawohl."
Yeah.
And there's this sense of, and I think there is something in The Critic generally as a series, using Jay's confused Jewish identity as a kind of fractured mirror through which to view mainstream, the mainstream series, like this sort of, you know, in the 1990s, the idea of Nazis coming back was perfectly laughable.
Right.
You know, like now you laugh at it because you're like, oh shit, y'all are some fucking prophets here. Like,
yeah, like in the 90s, like neo-Nazis existed, but they were like, the most mainstream they would get was they would be like the punching bag on the Jerry Springer show or something.
Yeah, exactly. I went to a few neo-Nazi demonstrations or anti-neo-Nazi demonstrations back in the. Glad I caught that. Fuck. Jesus. Went to a few counter demonstrations against, like, some tiny little Aryan Brotherhood type neo-Nazi group back in the, to counter protest them. And it would normally be back in the 90s. It would just be like, three scrawny little pipsqueaks who were pretty much LARPing being in the SS.
Yeah.
And we would outnumber them like 100-1 every time.
Sure.
You would almost feel sorry for them in a certain degree. It ain't like that anymore, unfortunately.
No, because those were the people who went from like zero to Nazi. They didn't have that like U-turn from like being like extremely online going into Nazism.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't a process for them. It was just sort of, they saw, I don't know, they watched Triumph of the Will in history class or something like that and said, "Oh, that looks cool."
Yeah, like they didn't have to go through that stage of seeing women on the internet talk about video games.
Yeah, exactly. Oh God, Jesus Christ. So yeah, it's been a weird 25 years.
Yeah.
This is the future now.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh man.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah. So yeah, we go from Hitler on the beach to whiny Jacques. To I guess sort of the main kind of.
Well, yeah, so they go from their wine lunch, which is just hilarious that they both get absolutely blasted off of a single glass of wine that they share.
Yeah.
So they go from there basically. So then we're back at Jay's hotel. Well, just briefly before Duke calls him up to his hotel room, which is this incredibly huge palatial suite.
I ordered white tigers.
Oh my God, was the critic predicting Tiger King?
Oh my Lord. I sincerely hope it was.
But no, well, I mean,
there was definitely postmodernism on it, then yeah, of course it did. Everything predicted Tiger King.
Well, yeah. Well, there's definitely something else we're going to get to in just a bit in this episode that feels like they were predicting something, but
yeah.
So basically Duke wants Jay to introduce him at this presentation he's giving, where Duke introduces this thing he calls Philip's vision, where he basically is going to rewrite the ending to sad movies.
Mm-hmm.
So since Duke Phillips is basically, a parody of Ted Turner did actually start this campaign in the 80s to colorize old films.
Oh God, I remember hearing about that. Yeah, yeah. And so this is sort of taking it to the next level. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're gonna colorize the great classics, like it's interesting. Like they use in this episode, the first episode you see Philip's vision applied to is Casablanca.
Here she goes, Rick. The love of your life. Louis, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Rick, I changed my mind. I'm coming back to you.
And I'm here too.
And Casablanca honestly doesn't work if it's not in black and white. And I am not a traditionalist when it comes to film, but there really is something about that just about that story that feels so much more noirish. I guess, I don't know, maybe the lazy way to say it is it doesn't come across as a true Bogart film unless it's been black and white.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know. I don't want to sound like an elitist or anything either, but whenever someone says they hate watching black and white movies, I just get so annoyed.
Yeah. I feel the same way when people say I don't watch anything with subtitles.
Oh, well, yeah.
So you're depriving yourself of probably the majority of film made in history?
Yeah.
You realize the Americans are not the only ones who make films, right?
Yeah, there's a little bit of a shades of, ethnocentrism to that.
Absolutely.
But that's not Philip's vision is not what I was referring to when I said it predicted the future. That's actually what we get to next, where he says he's basically going to use old actors and repurpose their images.
What would the stars say about the way you're exploiting their images?
Why don't we ask them?
Ah, I hereby release Duke Phillips, see? To use my face and voice in any way he sees fit for his marvelous new invention, Phillips Vision, see? Yeah.
Yes. I love it. Yeah, God, it predicts that's pretty much every Grammys now, isn't it? Fuck.
Oh, not just the Grammys, but they're literally resurrecting dead actors in movies now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Carrie Fisher in both Rogue One and in Episode 9.
Yeah.
And I forget if they revealed the name or anything, but basically they're going to bring back James Dean for a movie.
Oh God, I hadn't heard about this. Sorry,
okay,
horrify me more. Tell me more.
Okay,
tell me more.
I'm gonna have to take a brief sidebar because I'm gonna have to Google this now.
Sorry, but fuck, that's just that's terrible. God.
Okay, so this is from the independent.co.uk. James Dean to be brought back to life in new Vietnam War movie using CGI. Then the sub headline: actor died in 1955.
Oh God, we are
man.
doomed. We are doomed as a civilization.
I'm just picturing that they're gonna remake like Rebel Without a Cause, where he's like, "I'm gonna follow the rules."
Oh God, yeah, yeah. I mean, that is the thing. Like in some ways, Philip's vision does kind of. One of the things I do think it kind of predicts is sort of the way in which even some of the greatest subversive works of art can be sort of sucked back into the system, co-opted again. So something like Rebel Without a Cause, which is, has a lot of problems, but also basically was sort of like this scream against how stultifying the establishment had become.
Yeah.
Is now used to, prop up some terrible things,
Finding Jack is the name of the film with the CGI James Dean.
Oh,
just
God.
gonna put that out there. So
is there a release date on this, just so I know what day to definitely stay indoors? Like,
let's see. We'll see. What's the date? Oh, this article is old. This article is from November of last year.
Oh shit.
Oh, wait. Is expected to be released November 11th, 2020, which is Veterans Day.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah, here's a subtext. Hey, veterans, all of you are fictional.
Yeah.
You're nothing but a celluloid ghost now.
Hey, veterans, don't worry if you die. We can just bring back you as a CGI ghost.
Exactly. Oh, fucking hell. Jesus Christ. I mean, yeah, it really isn't all that different from Spartacus as Dukes of Hazzard.
Spartacus, we rigged the chariot of the centurion.
Then let's rock and roll.
Nobody gets away from Centurion Buford C. Augustus.
I love you, Spartacus.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Fuck.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Sorry, I was trying to very ungracefully get us back on track.
So that is the next thing we see, the updated Spartacus, because Duke said he doesn't care for all that Stanley Kubrick mumbo jumbo or whatever he says. Though I have to say, I actually like the version of Spartacus we have in this episode. I think it's hilarious.
Oh God, yeah, with Kirk Douglas up on the cross and he. God,
Maurice LaMarche's Kirk Douglas is awesome.
Yeah, seeing Kirk Douglas hanging off a cross, screaming, "Then let's rock and roll!"
Oh God, yeah.
That is one of those moments that it is like quintessential Critic.
Yeah.
That it was probably one of those moments that me as, again, like a 12-year-old just had me falling in love with the show and falling off the couch laughing.
Oh yeah. Even though I had definitely never seen Spartacus, definitely did not know who Kirk Douglas or Tony Curtis were. No. Just the pure surface level, humor of it.
Exactly. Yeah. Taking a biblical epic, which we had seen, we at least got what the tone was supposed to be. And to see that turn into the Dukes of Hazzard, which also I don't think I had seen a single episode of at the age of 12.
Oh, wait. Was it Dukes of Hazzard or Smokey and the Bandit?
It could have been either. I mean, because you have the Centurion trying to chase after him. He gets pulled into the mud. Yeah. And he's clearly based off like a Southern sheriff kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess it could be
might have
either
been Smokey. It might have, I don't know. Maybe it was...
That's the first place my mind went, but yeah, it could be either. They both work.
Yeah. One of the two.
Yeah. So that kind of puts Jay over the edge. He objects to the whole Philip's vision thing, and
you simply cannot do this.
I can do anything I want. If I want Citizen Kane's last word to be swing, then that's what it's gonna be. I'm a god, I tell you, a god! Rosebud. I mean, swing.
So then he's put in an ambulance. The ambulance takes him to a plane. The plane flies up and then flies to the building next door.
About 30 feet away.
Yeah.
For some reason. Yeah.
And then, that's where we learn the doctor tells Duke he has 4 years to live.
Yep.
And
You're telling me that this guy is going to live longer than me?
Yes, but he will have years of chronic back and joint pain until the day he chokes on a ham sandwich in his bathtub.
Oh, can the sandwich be olive loaf?
I suppose so.
Yes.
He has an ailment that is only seen when first cousins intermarry.
Yeah.
And Duke, God bless him. God bless his heart, as they say in the South. Bless his heart. He says, "Well, first time for everything."
Yeah. So, so he tries to show off like how fit he is. He like basically lifts up Jay and like does like push-ups with him.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And then I'm pretty sure they went to a commercial after that in the original.
So that takes us into Act 2, where now we're flying home from Cannes, and so Duke is like kind of coming to grips with this situation. I think Jay says, well, hey, they'll name a disease after you.
I already have a disease named after me. My real name is Duke Scabies. I'm a descendant of Colonel Beauregard Scabies.
And then that's,
They do that parody shot from Gone with the Wind.
Yeah.
With all of them, all the soldiers scratching. And then you hear one of them say, could have been worse. We could have been stationed under Colonel Krabs.
Oh, man. So back in Duke's office, there's already a newspaper headline about it. Word travels fast on this show. That Duke's stock is soaring because he's dying.
Oh, God. Yes. Jesus.
Which almost feels like something that might happen in our world if something happened to like Bezos or Elon Musk or something.
I have a feeling it's going to happen to Elon Musk if no one else. He's already such a friggin' liability to...
Oh, yeah.
Jesus.
Like every time he tweets, like I actually just saw this today. Like every time Elon Musk tweets, you can see people in the replies saying like, shut up, you just cost me $10,000.
Absolutely. I mean, like, again, these are the people who are supposed to be like our best and brightest. People leading us into a bright future. Like,
I mean, it really just exposes like what a lie Atlas Shrugged is, right?
Oh, absolutely. No one would miss a goddamn thing if Elon Musk went on strike or Jeff Bezos. Just fuck all of them. Jesus. Yeah.
So the next thing that happens is Duke says he's not a country bumpkin the way everyone sees him, but then we get no other way to say it, the country redneck who sings the buffet offerings.
Wait a minute. This means they think I'm some kind of country bumpkin. What's for lunch?
Side meat and turnip greens, boiled potatoes and pinto beans, possum stew and shoe fly pie, pickled pig's feet fresh from the sty. Yum, yum.
So then I forget how we get to this, but Duke basically shows off another example of Philip's vision with One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Oh, God, yeah. Jay sits down to eat lunch with him, and Duke essentially turns One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest into a laundry detergent commercial.
Oh, yeah, where even Nurse Ratched uses it on her whites and her colors. Oh, my God.
Jesus.
The thought of Nurse Ratched like being a sex object, like, whoa.
Yes, absolutely. I that movie, problematic though it is, I guess, by our standards, is such a masterpiece.
I love that movie.
Yeah, it's a remarkable film. And again, sort of goes back to like that 1960s and 70s sensibility of using film to relay absolute rebellion. Like it is based on the Ken Kesey novel. Kesey was a part of the, original acid tests back in the 60s.
Yeah, one of the was he like the leader of the merry pranksters, or
he was part of them. I can't recall if he was the leader, but yeah, and it's just like, and again, it comes full circle. What, 25 years later, by the time this episode comes out, and it's turned into, a detergent commercial, sort of the full spectrum domination of all art by commerce.
Well, it's like in the song Big Yellow Taxi, they paved over paradise to put up a parking lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's the best. And now I think that I'm pretty sure that song is used in car commercials now.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
If you can rebel against it, you can commodify it.
It's like, hey, it has a car in the title. That's all you need.
Yeah, we'll use that. Yeah. Shit. So yeah, like I think that discussed Jay. He goes outside and says he's going to retch, and then like Duke, what is he like? Tell him, like I need you to stick around. You're the only person who won't try to cheer me up.
Yeah. So he basically convinces Jay to stick around, and so Jay says Duke should make the most of the time he has left, which for Duke means he wants to do something he's always wanted to do, which is tell off his boss.
Well, Mr. Sherman, you think you're the puppet master and I'm just dancing on your strings? Well, snip, snip. You're nothing but a scurvy little spider spinning your webs. Take that Benet Brith Award. Man, that felt great.
That boss that he doesn't have. But
yeah.
So he makes
Jay, you are my boss now.
Oh, man. Then, we get the scene of him telling off Jay, his pretend boss, which is great.
Take that Benet Brith Award. I remember that line, and probably will until the day I die, where he takes Jay's probably priceless glass trophy from the Benet Brith Foundation and just smashes it.
Oh my God. Would that be a hate crime?
I'm pretty sure it would be, and probably should be, especially coming from Duke.
Yeah. So then that's, now we get to the Scrabble scene, which is great. I believe we're at Jay's apartment.
Yeah.
Because Duke is playing Scrabble with Jay and Marty, and this kind of reminded me of the Simpsons episode where Bart tries to make up a new word.
Quizzabuck.
That's not a word.
Get Webster on the phone. Noah, how you doing? It's Duke. How much would it cost to make Quizzabuck a word? I don't know what it means. How about a big problem? Great. How about that other word I invented? Dukelicious. No one's using it. What a Duke-tastrophe.
I love it. Yeah, because it's hilarious, but also completely within Duke's character.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's exactly the kind of thing. Honestly, it's the kind of thing you could see Ted Turner doing back in the 90s.
Yeah. So then in the next scene, Duke is basically dictating his will to Jay, and where I think this is maybe the first instance of the long-running gag of Duke thinking Jay is gay.
Is this the first? I could have swore there were some other. I mean, I'm not doubting you. I'm just.
I believe so.
Yeah, crap. I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the editor of the Critic Wikipedia or anything, but I'm going to, as far as I can tell, this is the first example of that.
Oh, so this is the first of the I am not gay moments from Jay Sherman.
Yeah, which happens a few times in this episode and then just kind of continues.
Yeah, it's
kind of for the rest of the series.
Yeah, through the whole series, they just sort of pepper it in, I think, with increasing frequency.
Yeah.
But what does he say? He's gonna.
He's gonna.
He's gonna endow every university with a gay studies department in Jay's name,
which is kind of amazing. Every university in America, that's a lot of universities.
And this is back in the 90s when that kind of wasn't as Frequent, actually.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't start to really hit a stride with like women's studies and gay studies and all other sorts of sexuality studies until maybe the aughts.
Like, imagine what a move that would have been for Jay to just be like, yeah, you know what? I am gay. Give me those departments of gay studies.
Absolutely. Yeah. God.
So then in the next scene, Duke is meeting with the poet Rod McEwen. Which, honestly, I had to do research to find out who that even is.
Me too. Yeah.
Front yard squirrel is stealing oranges. He crabs and chit-chats to himself. Then threading through and into leaves and branches, he spies an orange 3 times his head size.
Silly old squirrel. Rod's going to write my musical autobiography.
Why are you doing this?
Duke and I have been friends ever since we met at the Cat Lovers Convention.
Shut up, rhyme boy.
Apparently, he was like the Thomas Kincaid of poetry. He just
God.
Yeah, apparently all of his, I don't want to shit on him too much. I've never read any of his stuff, but it kind of fits with the little poem that he reads when Jay comes into his office, because it's about like a squirrel finding an orange, and it's just like really saccharine, oversweet type stuff. But McEwen, it turns out, even though he was writing this like very, very just like sappy, schmaltzy type poetry, he was also a member of the Mattachine Society, was a lifelong advocate for gay rights. And apparently he read his poetry like alongside people like Ginsberg and Kerouac back in New York in the 50s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I'm not quite sure how he got into, just such sugary saccharine verse. But yeah, there you have it.
Yeah. Well, also, I guess kind of amazing that they tapped him to do a voice or to voice himself on this show.
Yeah.
Like it feels like such an out of left field, reference to make.
Yeah. They're going to be like, can we get Rod McEwen? It's like right after they decided, oh, great, we got Gene Shalit. Perfect. Excellent.
Yeah.
What about McEwen?
So then the next scene, we're still in Duke's office. It's now nighttime. Duke is kind of feeling depressed. Jay suggests Duke try religion. And then maybe my favorite Duke moment of the whole episode.
Have you ever considered going to church?
Religion, huh?
It's not too late, my little lamb.
Well, like most members of America's cultural elite, I worship Pan, the goat god. But thanks for the thought.
Like, I don't go in for conspiracy theories or anything like that, but I could totally believe that a bunch of billionaires could have a secret pedophile ring.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, hell, isn't that been pretty much every single news story over the past, right up until the pandemic? It's like,
yeah.
I mean, of course, Jeffrey Epstein had a sex ring that he also had Bill Clinton and Donald Trump and Alan Dershowitz and God knows
Matt Groening.
Yeah, Matt Groening. Oh God, yeah, that one kind of broke my heart.
Oh yeah. But yeah, it's sort of like when you get to be that rich, like no rules apply to you. So it's like, what can you do that's dangerous? You just have to go to bigger and bigger taboos.
Well, it really is it's sort of one of those moments when you start to see some logic in the conspiracy theories. And like you, I don't go in on them at all, but there's a sense of how to we already know that the rich control so many parts of our lives. So of course, something like Skull and Bones.
Oh yeah.
Or whatever the Owl's Lodge, I think is what it's called, or the Bohemian Grove. That's what it's called. Of course we're going to project some really terrible, nefarious image onto it, because honestly, they probably are, where a lot of terrible deals are thrashed out. But here's the thing. The rich are also boring and mundane.
Oh yeah.
I think that's one of the best things about Duke is they make him such a parody of a parody of a parody that that throughout this whole episode, the idea of him being mortal, because it becomes its own punchline. Because again, they've made him so on that sort of like sinister, ridiculous kind of path that they put him on, that of course the idea of him dying becomes just a perfect punchline. You know, it's like bringing him back down to earth in some ways through Sherman.
Yeah. So after he says he worships Pan, the goat god. So Duke basically is confronting his mortality head on, because the next thing we see is that he's made an appointment with Dr. Krikorian. I guess, you know, the libel-free version of Dr.
Kevorkian,
Jack Kevorkian, who was also, you know, like a big target for parody and jokes in the 90s.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I remember it. I mean, I think that was when he was doing, back in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s is when he was probably the most controversial.
Yeah. Like he was in the news a lot. He was definitely the subject of a lot of monologue jokes on the late night shows and stuff.
Lots of vitriol. And yeah, I think they sort of run with it in this, where they bring in like, what is Dr. Krikorian's death machine? It's like,
oh yeah, it's like a carnival machine.
It's a carnival with light bulbs and
like calliope music.
Yeah, exactly.
Stop! You don't have to do this.
All that's left for me now is to die with dignity and grace.
On our headphones, you can listen to Stan Freberg.
The perfect end to the perfect life.
It's like, and I love that moment before when the actual doctor is standing there saying like, "Hi, Mr. Phillips, I'm here to, you know, do you in." And he looks at Jay and says, "Oh, you'll go easy. I'm not, I'm not Duke."
Oh man.
It's like, "This Adonis? Oh, we're going to need to," looks at Duke and this like peak of physical perfection.
Yeah. And then, you know, Jay tries to like tell Duke that, you know, he doesn't have to do this. And Duke says, you know, he wants to die with dignity. And then that's when the nurse says, you know, they can give him headphones so he can listen to Stan Freberg.
A perfect end to a perfect life, I think Duke says afterwards.
Which I have to make just a brief sidebar here. I'm actually I've met, and I guess I would consider myself friends with Stan Freberg's son, Donovan.
No shit.
Oh yeah. He is dating someone at the Pack Theater.
Oh God, of course he is.
So yeah.
That's
But
great.
I mean, you know, super nice guy. He's awesome.
No, of course. Yeah. You can't help what you're born into.
Yeah. But the listeners may know him as the blonde kid from the Encyclopedia Britannica commercial from the early 90s.
Wait, your friend? Stan Freberg's son?
Yes, Donovan Freberg is the kid who had a report due on space.
Oh, my God. Oh, jeez.
Yeah, that was his claim to fame.
Oh, God. Holy crap. I do remember that ad.
Remember me? I'm the kid that had a report due on space. Then I got the new Encyclopedia Britannica.
He had a report due on space, and then he got the new Encyclopedia...
I think I made that abundantly clear.
Yes.
Anyhow, here it is. I mean, hey, everybody knows this is the greatest encyclopedia in the world. Help me get a B+.
Why not an A?
Too long. I found so much great information, I put it all in. Overkill.
Jesus.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was everywhere.
Yeah. Oh, crap. That's great. God. But yeah, what is it when I think then now is I think when the Lorenzo's Oil parody comes into it, because really before
yes.
it's only it's not really tied in at all. Here's where they do it. They do it quite deliberately when Jay says, "Give me a month, I'll find a cure," and then Duke says, "Oh, like that, like in that movie Lorenzo's Oil." Yes, exactly.
Wait, don't give up yet. What if we find a cure for your disease, like in that film Lorenzo's Oil?
Isn't that the picture you called a mixture of fantasy and crap?
Yes, I dubbed it Fantacrap.
I dubbed it Fantacrap. Which I feel like I had forgotten about until I rewatched the episode yesterday. I'm going to remember Fantacrap.
Oh, nice.
As a critic, as I am, I think it may be one of my like B plot missions in life to get Fanta crap into the dictionary.
But yeah, it occurred to me that, that means that Jay and Duke are both in on the inventing new words game.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. You've got Quizabuck, Duke-licious, Duke-tastrophe, and now Fanta crap.
So then the last thing that happens in this act is Dr. Krikorian, who sees that now he's not going to get to kill Duke, is panicking because it's the first time he'll have ever
lost.
Well, I think he says not lost a patient.
Yeah, I think you're right, actually.
So he tries to run down Duke in the Deathmobile, which is just amazing.
Yeah, and it's just like a broken down, like gray Cadillac. It's like 15 years old, something like that.
Yeah, this is another like one of those moments where the critic just gets very cartoony. Like it almost felt like a Roadrunner cartoon where the car just breaks down.
Well, and right before that, they played the Batman theme song from the old. And they hop in this broken down Cadillac that literally entirely falls apart in front of Duke while he's crossing the street. It's this, again, sort of this great usage of the medium of the cartoon against itself, like popping the artifice. And the interesting thing is actually, I don't know how much this has been brought up so far in the other episodes you've recorded, but it's like the notion of cartoons being for adults is still somewhat not controversial, but some people still kind of roll their eyes when you say I'm watching The Simpsons or South Park or whatever. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, I'm pretty sure my dad said that to me at some point, but anytime you put on a Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner cartoon, he would piss himself with laughter.
Sure.
Like that's always been the thing about, I don't think there was ever a time when the writers of a cartoon weren't also thinking, how do we entertain the parents in the audience?
Sure.
How do we make sure we don't lose them so that they're not like begrudging dragging their kid to, watch Saturday morning cartoons with them? And I think that kind of moment at the crosswalk kind of, there's a little bit of that going on in there.
Well, and it's probably impossible to make a cartoon, at least a comedic cartoon, that doesn't pay homage in some form to the Looney Tunes at some point.
Exactly.
They're so, they're that huge.
Exactly.
So after that, after we see the Deathmobile just kind of crash and burn, Jay sets off to find a cure. But Duke, he's not really optimistic.
Yeah, he ain't feeling it.
He says he's tried so many medications, he now has kaleidoscope vision.
Exactly. Yeah, they inject him with like horsefly larva or something like that.
Oh, God. Yeah.
And of course, we have one of the many great Jewish moments of the critic where 28 Jays sing a lidle, diddle, deedle, lidle, diddle, deedle.
Yeah.
Luck'em schmuckus.
Oh God. Yeah. I love when they let Jay express his Jewishness, goofy as it may be.
It's so lovely. I think this might be one of the reasons why I embraced a Jewish identity come my 30s and just went like, yeah, you know what? Like, when I look back at so much of the culture that I was imbibing in the 1990s, of course I'm a Jew.
Yeah. So after that, Jay finds a plant in the rainforest that he thinks might have the cure.
Oh, God.
And I don't know if this is a parody of a direct movie or something, but I
remember there was a movie when I was rewatching it yesterday. There was a movie called Medicine Man that had it had Sean Connery and Lorraine Bracco in it, pre Sopranos, Lorraine Bracco, and it basically was about Sean Connery and Bracco were both scientists or botanists, doctors of some kind out in the middle of the Brazilian rainforest, living with a tribe out there, trying to locate. There was something like Connery had actually found among some of the plants out there basically a treatment for cancer. It was sort of a race against time for them to find more of it before the rainforest was literally torn down. I can't vouch for the quality of it because I saw it when I was 10 thereabouts. But there is something to be said for. I mean, we've been saying this for decades, right? There's untold natural miracles in the rainforests. And well, frankly, this is another one of those moments. It's sort of like the earlier Nazi moment in The Critic, where, Jay airdrops himself in, looks at this plant and says, "This is going to save Duke's life." And then he accidentally drops the flare.
Oh, yeah. Right.
And starts another rainforest fire. And again, I'm just, 25 years later, this is both funnier and not as funny at the same time.
Because the rainforest, is literally being burnt down now.
Yeah, exactly, because of that fucking asshole, that literal fascist Bolsonaro.
And I come to think of it, I do have vague memories of Medicine Man, and I kind of remember there being, I guess it was maybe a spin-off series, Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman.
Was that a spin-off? I want to say that was a completely different scenario, wasn't it?
Well, I never watched either of them, so I couldn't really say.
I never watched it either, but I'm pretty sure that took place in like the Old West.
Oh,
So, but you're right. They were about the same time. And who knows, they might've been tapping into the same type of film/TV watching market, for it. I don't know. There might be something to be written about, cause the 1990s was also when we had ER, and now really the only medical show, House has been off the air for a while, but what's left really in terms of medical shows? Like Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah.
Yeah, Grey's, that's it. Yeah. And that's been on for so long that just, I don't know. I think just everyone just sort of expects it to be there.
McDreamy is now woken up. The dream's over.
Wait, he was asleep?
I don't know, like dream, like guys.
I haven't watched a single episode of that in probably 15 years, dude.
Oh my God.
Is the cast even the same? I mean, like at this point, I know Katherine Heigl was off of it a long ass time ago.
Oh, but yeah. I never
left.
I never really watched it, so I don't know. I just know that's like my mom's favorite show.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of, I kind of feel like a show like Grey's Anatomy is made for moms. Just moms, the demographic.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. So after that unfortunate trip to the rainforest, Jay, he goes to like a lab to try to buy like a few hundred test animals.
Oh God, yeah,
which is a pretty novel approach.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then the scientists,
you weren't going to eat them, are you? No, I'm going to inject them with terrible diseases. Yeah. Then I'm going to eat them.
Ugh. But also the scientist uses the word quizzybuck.
Quizzybuck, yeah.
We'd like to help you, but we're in a real quizzybuck. All of our animals are committed to testing cosmetics.
Well, hello, you wascally wabbit.
Dad, you gotta start dating.
Which is ironic because by this point, Jay has already gone through several romantic interests.
Yeah, so in the very first episode, he dates Valerie.
I believe Valerie Fox is her name, the actress.
Valerie, yeah. That's in the pilot. Who?
The second episode is the woman who ties him up, and it becomes
the misery episode.
Yeah.
Oh Jesus, yeah. Oh God, that one is that's a good one.
Yep. And there's Another episode where he meets and has a date with the woman who is inside the Humphrey the Hippo costume.
Oh God, I forgot about that.
Yeah,
Humphrey. That's right. He has. Yeah, and that's right after he gets into a fight with Humphrey.
Yes.
Oh God, all those kids saying they're going to break his nose because he made Humphrey sad.
Yep.
Yeah, and then he ends up at Margot's debutante ball.
Yes.
Balls Humphrey. Yeah. Oh wow.
Yep.
That's great. Yeah. So he actually has had something of a love life, which is interesting given that Alex doesn't come into the picture until second season.
Right. So first season Jay is just kind of like George Costanza in that sense.
Yeah, exactly. Shit, wow.
After this, we go to the cryogenics
place.
institute.
Yeah.
Where the sign outside says "Home of the Corpsicle."
Home of the Corpsicle. Yeah, they said we could freeze the doctor says we could freeze your boss until we find a cure. Nurse comes in and says those kids are skiing down Orson Welles again. Yeah. And throughout this whole series, poor Orson Welles.
I know, right?
They make him, especially, I don't think at this point in the series they've gotten to the commercials yet. The Rose and Peas commercials and all of that.
Yeah.
I don't think they've gotten to that. I could be wrong, but I don't think they've gotten to any of that.
I want to say there was maybe one Orson Welles moment we've had so far, but it wasn't the commercials. It was something else.
Not the commercials. But God, they make him such a easy butt of the joke.
Yeah.
When there's something so tragic, I thought those commercials were hilarious when I was 12.
Oh yeah.
When I had only a vague idea of who Orson Welles was. And it was only in my 20s that someone finally showed me on YouTube the Paul Masson commercials,
the outtakes,
including the outtakes where he's just drunk. I'm like, oh my God, this guy was like a fucking savant of film and theater, and also was kind of one of us too. Like he was a fellow traveler of the Communist Party.
Oh, okay, I never knew that.
Yeah, he definitely was like part of the Federal Theater Project. Was allied. I mean, Citizen Kane is so good at skewering the emptiness of wealth and power.
Yeah.
Kind of makes sense if you put it in the context of what is sort of, not exactly he was a communist, but he was like communist adjacent in the 30s back when it mattered.
Right.
And he was just such a fucking master. And so to have him end his life doing beef burgers commercials, I just, Jesus.
Yeah. I mean, because basically the final part of Orson Welles' life, basically his film career had come to an end, and
it had tanked it.
Yeah,
but he had a great voice, so
and he still had some name recognition, and he still managed to make F for Fake, which is a great film.
I have never seen that one actually. I'm gonna have to.
I think people consider it like the first mockumentary because it's kind of presented in the documentary format, but Orson really plays with the format a lot, and a lot of it is fictional.
Oh, wow.
And it's great.
All right, I'm going to have to see it now. I probably will find it even more tragic that he died in obscurity the way he did. God. But poor Orson Welles. They really, the kids skiing down him is just sort of, God, it's nothing compared to what they have in store for him later in the series.
Oh God. Yeah. And then I think the joke that's kind of inevitable when you're at a cryogenics institute, Jay tips over a dead body and it shatters.
And it shatters. Yes, exactly. It's inevitable. And you know what? There's a reason for that because it never stops being funny.
Yes. It's like slipping on a banana peel. It's like it has to happen.
Utterly timeless. Timeless. Yeah.
So then after this, we get a brief foray to Jay's parents' house. This is the only Eleanor and Franklin we get in this episode.
Oh God!
Though Franklin is at his Franklinest.
Oh, he is at his best. He is feeling his oats in this little scene.
Your father is conducting an experiment of his own. Maybe you two can work together.
What is the point of this experiment?
I've invented the first Fishmo baby whirlamagig. It'll be bigger than the Badger Blaster.
Yes. He's constructed an insane machine that has like kids spinning around.
Yeah,
and,
like whirling babies, and there's a conveyor belt with fish. and Franklin's convinced it's going to be the best thing. We still don't know exactly what it does.
No.
But Franklin is convinced it's going to be the biggest thing since the Badger Blaster.
Yeah. Which we never get to see what the Badger Blaster is, do we?
No, it's probably better left to the imagination.
Oh man. Yeah. So then we get to the next episode of Jay's show. He's been working so hard to find a cure that he now can't even stay awake on air as he is reviewing Jurassic Park 2.
Revenge of the Raptors.
You may have us, but you'll never get off the island.
I beg to differ, for you see, the other raptors and I have constructed a crude suspension bridge to Venezuela. Once there, I shall lie low and assume odd jobs under the name Mr. Pilkington, but perhaps I've said too much.
And again, you sort of are caught in this kind of the datedness of this show because it was before Jurassic Park 2 came out, before Jurassic World or any of those, other expansions of the universe. And I think you kind of forget actually, or I think we kind of forget how significant Jurassic Park was when it came out.
Oh, yeah.
Like I saw it in the theaters and it was, as a theater going experience, it was one of those moments when like you can genuinely talk about cinema being magical, just like completely enthralling you and blowing you away. And so the sort of, but none of the sequels measure up to that.
No, not at all.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just sort of like, this was the magic that probably should have stayed just in one bottle. Because if you try to parse it out, it just dilutes itself. And I think actually when you make the intelligence of the raptors into this like literal thing where they're able to, shove a newspaper under a door to get the key out and unlock themselves. And they have a plan to turn their, they have a plan to escape to Venezuela.
Oh yeah.
Assume odd jobs under the name Mr. Pilkington. Like just, all right. Yeah. I mean, this gets it again, just everything we were talking about before. Like Jay is the only one who sees that all film and indeed the world has definitively jumped the shark,
Oh yeah.
He's the only one who's able to see it.
Yeah. Cause really the biggest recurring joke throughout the whole show is that they make like fake sequels to films that, well, to their mind, would never have a sequel.
Yeah, exactly. Like
Howard's End would never become Howard Stern's End. Like that's ludicrous.
Exactly.
So, like Jurassic, like how can you make a sequel to Jurassic Park? Like that would never work.
That's like Gene and Reese got that it is an unsequelizable film.
Yeah.
It didn't need anything. It did not need that.
Well, even though I guess did Michael Crichton write he wrote Jurassic Park and then he wrote The Lost World, right? But I guess,
Yes, I think he did. But still, like, just filmically, the magic was gone. Like, there was, books correspond to a different sort of aesthetic logic than film. There was no reason to turn The Lost World into a film other than making money. And it did that. It as a commodity, it fulfilled, it met its goal,
mm-hmm. Yep.
So, but in terms of film, no. And the weird thing is that we are all in on being the butt of the joke along with Jay. Like we see how ridiculous this shit is too. So the joke is just as much on us, but Jay's isolated in his world. So I don't know if there's something to learn from us from this, that like, wait, all of us identify with Jay, but we're all still isolated and completely powerless to change what Hollywood does. I don't know what we take from that. And I don't think necessarily the creators of the show had a clear idea of what they wanted people to take away from it either. But it's an interesting question. It's a very discombobulating but obsessive question to ask too. And for me, as someone who writes about art, I find myself, answering that question is my holy grail.
Okay.
The one thing you will never find. But you just sort of, it's what else can you do? Yeah.
I'm glad that the critic could be, relevant to your, your regular vocation.
Oh God, I will never forgive it. I will never forgive this show for it.
Yeah. So then we're at Jay's home where he's, just basically mixing random chemicals, and he did manage to get one test animal. He's got a hamster there.
Yeah. That poor thing.
Yeah. And
I don't know. That life seems to be going pretty good for that hamster at the end of this scene.
Honestly. I think life is about to get much better for the hamster, because Jay sneezes into his concoction, and then when he gives it to the hamster, he basically has this Popeye moment where he starts
exactly.
He starts running around. He does cartwheels.
He bends open the bars of his cage and just starts doing cartwheels back and forth while Jay has this, I'm a happy doc. And then basically, finds an excuse to say the names of all the Disney songs.
Oh, yeah.
I did it! Oh, I'm a duck. A happy, sneezy duck. Ooh, I'm a sleepy, happy, sneezy duck. If I don't get to bed, I'll be a grumpy, dopey, sleepy, happy, sneezy duck. Bashful?
While the real punchline of that scene is the cartwheeling hamster underneath it.
Yeah. It's amazing they got both of those things going on in this scene, and it's like you don't know what to pay attention to.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love just the visual of that hamster doing cartwheels. That was awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and then I think we go straight into the party celebrating Duke being cured.
Yeah. The serum does indeed cure Duke. And then the entertainment at this party is basically, it's a bunch of former presidents, starting off with Ronald Reagan, and then we get
dead.
Dead now, I guess alive at the time of this episode.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And then we also have Carter, thankfully still alive. Yep. Gerald Ford?
Dead.
Oh.
Sorry.
And Bill Clinton.
Take it away, Jimmy. Duke is well. Well.
He's swell?
Swell. Not in hell. Hell.
I'm glad Duke has his health, so I can tax his awesome wealth.
Oh, but also don't forget you have Bush Sr. in there.
Oh,
who's
right.
also dead.
Yes. We got him.
Yeah.
And of course, Bill Clinton playing sax.
Yeah. God. Yeah. Which is, it is interesting. Like, obviously Clinton is, far more the butt of the jokes in other episodes, like where they make fun of his weight, where he's eating McDonald's and falls through the floor of the Oval Office and falls on socks. I think in the episode where Jay goes to war, it takes place during the Gulf War. They have that little scene where Jay meets President Bush.
Oh,
and his advisor says, film critic is one of the most reprehensible professions. Are you sure you want to take this picture? Hey, my approval rating's 90%. How bad can it get? And then Bush loses election. And there's that little sidebar column that says lecherous hillbilly wins election.
Oh man.
I just like, again, maybe this is one of those things where it shows how the show was made 25 years ago, because there's so many easier things to make fun of Clinton for nowadays, you know?
Right.
Like being on Epstein's plane, frankly.
Yeah.
You know, it's Jesus.
I mean, they really nailed him with the lecherous thing, because like that's kind of still relevant.
That's absolutely still relevant. Yeah. But yeah, it's this kind of, it's interesting to see that sort of the way in which the show has aged.
And that's one of the examples where this show, you know, they're sometimes not afraid to really, you know, give their jokes teeth and go for the jugular, but they never really stay on that level, or they never really follow through with that.
Yeah, I mean, like you said it before, I think in a previous episode where you talked about Woody Allen.
Yeah,
you know, like they're hinting in I think that like second or third episode that there's a scene with Woody Allen and Sun-Yi, and this is like, it was already an open secret that Woody Allen was kind of a perv, but you know, you could argue it's before we knew the full fucking extent of it,
right?
You know, and that's fine. That is what it is, but it gets. They kind of stop at just like making him goofy. You know, he like dances off into a manhole, something like that after the joke where he says, "Oh, I thought this was the prom," and it's like they don't really take a stand. They just sort of like, it's a very, in some ways, I think it kind of anticipates the South Park ethos. You know, where everything is just worthy of being pointed at and laughed at, but in terms of actually what we thinking something, having an opinion, taking a stand.
Oh yeah, you mean the South Park ethos of always like taking the middle ground on everything.
Yeah. It's you stand on the fence so that you can just piss on everyone who's not on the fence with you.
It's like taking a side like makes you like worthy of mockery. Like the fact that you're not apathetic, like that's the thing that we're mocking you for.
Exactly. And it's real, like you see it actually at the closing sequence of that this episode, which I guess we'll get to. I guess
so yeah, we're almost there. So in return for basically saving his life, Duke, you know, says Jay can ask for whatever he wants. We get another example.
Anything?
Yeah. It's like, I'm not gay.
No, it's all right. A deal's a deal. You can go hog wild.
But no, so Jay, you know, wishes for Philip's vision to be destroyed.
Yes. The one big victory of this episode, honestly. Yeah.
I don't want Rhett coming back to Scarlet. I don't want the guy from my left foot to become a punter for the Bears. I want Deborah Winger, Allie McGraw, and Bambi's mother to die.
All right, Jay, you got it. Because you didn't just save me. You saved everyone with Duke Phillips' disease.
And then, so Duke says he'll do it. Unfortunately, it did not happen in our world, but it happened in Critic world. And then, you know, Duke says, you know, that Jay is now a hero to everyone who has his same disease.
I'm Lars Schonberg, and I just clubbed my 1000th baby seal thanks to Jay's oil.
Hi, I'm a drunken tanker captain. I wouldn't be able to spill my oil without Jay's oil.
Your streets will run red with blood thanks to Jay's oil.
Sherman über alles.
We love you, Jay. We love you, man.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus Christ. And this is like, this is where the parody of Lorenzo's oil is the most pronounced. Because I remember at the end of that film, they do exactly what they do at the end of this episode, which is they have this like whole mosaic of footage of kids who had the disease that Lorenzo's oil cured. He goes through this whole mosaic and saying, like, I'm alive because of Lorenzo's oil. Except what they do this time around is it's a KKK member saying it, and a drunken oil tanker driver,
a guy who clubs baby seals.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure, like, someone who's clearly meant to be Gaddafi, Muammar Gaddafi, which is not the first time he's shown up in The Critic, which is interesting.
Right? Yeah, he's also his son goes to the UN school.
The UN school. Hi, I'm Omar's daddy, and then there's like. And then, like, clearly a neo-Nazi skinhead saying Sherman über alles.
Which is so ironic considering Jay is Jewish.
Yes, exactly. and that, like, really personifies what we were just talking about with it in this. There was something, like, I've been trying to place why it is that The Critic has such a cult following. And I've been thinking about it for a long time, even before I was asked to come on the show, even before you put the podcast together, which is that, it has there was something about The Critic that definitely anticipated the Adult Swim types of cartoons, like home movies, brilliant, the first 5 seasons, shall we say, of Aqua Teen, the really kind of like they tapped into something, again, that sort of realization that adults can watch cartoons for something to be subverted to, and have really, really incisive parody that you simply can't do with live action nowadays. It's just like, it sort of shows a difference in the format. And I was trying to figure out, okay, like what is it about the show that's led it to have such a cult following? It was only on for 2 seasons, 23 episodes, and then a few of the Simpsons crossover, and then the online shorts. What is it that made it such like an underappreciated phenomenon for folks like of our age? Like, we're about the same age. I'm 37. I want to say you're probably about the same.
I turned 35 this year.
Yeah, exactly. So we're of that same kind of like elder millennial, younger Gen X. We're like right on the cusp of that.
Mm-hmm.
And there was something about the show that just kind of like, for me as like a kid, watching Comedy Central late night, when they would show reruns of The Critic, after it got canceled from Fox, and there was something that just really kind of like it obviously it was more than just funny to us. I mean, it was, and it was brilliant in that respect. But I'm trying to place like why was that? Why was it that it kind of stuck in our heads so much? And I'm thinking about like, what were the 90s? It was this kind of moment when, we were all told that history was over, the fall of the Berlin Wall, capitalism's triumphant, all of that type of stuff. And and meaning was all relative. And so therefore any attempt to find meaning kind of didn't really, it was just bound to like, just miss. You just swinging a baseball bat at air. And then, but I think also of the other art that really kind of hit with our generation, like grunge, hip hop, all of that type of stuff. It was sort of this way of embracing the meaningless of it in order to find a kind of meaning. And there was something about The Critic that kind of spoke at that also. It lambasted the meaninglessness of it, but it didn't necessarily find any other meaning at the other end. And that kind of like lack of, what's the best way to put it? That kind of not taking a stand thing kind of made sense at the time,
Yeah, it's kind of, I think, I always thought it was kind of symptomatic of like Gen X kind of nihilism.
Absolutely. It was kind of like peak postmodernism in some ways. It just kind of like was like, because by our standards, we would look at this and like, what is that final sequence telling us? in some ways it's telling us that if we want universal healthcare, if we want decent healthcare in this country, then it means we're going to have to give healthcare to the bad people too.
Right.
Which guilty as charged. That's absolutely anyone who talks about Medicare for all. Yes, we say that too. But also there's something else opened up by that. You have to also admit that, oh, wait, all these people who are the naysayers about healthcare for everyone also have to admit that, wait, oh, fine. So you do admit that there are racists who want to go around and beating up anyone of color or Jews or anyone else. You do have to admit that these people are out there. And back in the 1990s, actually, that was a weird thing to say because, again, you had this kind of like end of history kind of thing. All struggle had been removed from public life. But the KKK was still there. You certainly still had oil tankers running aground. Like when was the Exxon Valdez thing? That was just a few years before this episode came out, if I remember correctly.
I want to say that was like 91, maybe.
Yeah, I think so. So it's like there's this sense, I think, in a lot of the best culture from the 90s that like was sort of using the end of history to show that history was still happening. Now, that may be too pretentious an analysis to apply to a cartoon. but I think if we aren't looking for meaning in this type of stuff, then we're honestly kind of admitting that there is no meaning. Unless everything kind of fits together in that way, then, it's like, well, what's the point of really having an opinion on any of it,
No, like I'm totally in favor of, taking your entertainment seriously and thinking that, it is like if we want to treat it as art, then, that means really critically examining it, which I'm all in favor of. And I've also like trying to think about what is it about this series that made me remember it like all those years later?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I can't really get as deep as you got. For me, it was just like, oh, I remember all those great jokes and I want to hear those jokes again.
Yeah. In some ways it kind of, maybe this is one of the reasons why it mattered that we all identified with Jay the most. Because it made it, if not cool, at least permissible to have an opinion about how utterly idiotic things had become by the 1990s. I guess maybe that was one of the things that made it sort of sit comfortably with, the best of the other culture from that time, because it was trying to push back against this idea that everything is meaningless. Because if everything is meaningless, then that means even the terrible shit is inconsequential. And I think that, it has consequences.
Yeah.
So,
and we could kind of see Jay as, as the guy who's like there's that episode where he wins the Pulitzer Prize for basically begging people to stop seeing schlock and stop going to bad films. So like,
if the movie sucks, don't go.
Yeah.
Or does he say sucks or stinks? It would probably make sense.
Oh, he probably says stinks. That would be more on brand for him.
Exactly.
But so Jay does believe that good art is worth fighting for. And so it definitely has meaning.
Yeah.
And so we can maybe almost put Jay alongside people like, I don't know, Bill Hicks or people that kind of just argue against the phoniness of society.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's something in that very much speaks to us. And it's not to say there isn't problematic stuff in the Critic. Like, I think actually its portrayal of Arabs gets really, really uncomfortable.
Oh yeah, and I've mentioned on this show several times their portrayal of trans people.
Absolutely, yes, yeah, and it's like, that stuff needs to be addressed and talked about, but I don't think it takes away from the overall incisiveness of just saying that something was happening in that sort of aftermath of the 70s and 80s, where insisting that nothing had a meaning meant putting yourself at ease with everything becoming crap and everything becoming, including things in your own life, right? So it's like there's fairly trivial ways that we could talk about everything becoming crap, like art, like though arguably that has consequence too, because if people don't have access to good art, then they don't have access to actually a very fundamental part of human existence, right? But there's far more immediate, potentially deadly ways to talk about everything becoming crap, like the healthcare system in the United States becoming crap. That has actual, as we are seeing right now, in the most like slow motion, tragic way possible. That has real consequence. And yes, we should have an opinion on that. We should, but we should also be able to skewer that in the most like absolute merciless way possible. That people don't have access to healthcare during a pandemic is just like, how do you justify that? Well, the only way you can really justify it is saying that history is over and nothing has any consequence. That doesn't fly anymore. That doesn't fly anymore, and that hasn't flown for some time. We're still dealing with the aftermath of it, but it doesn't have the credibility. It doesn't carry the water that it used to back in, say, the 90s.
Sure. Yeah. Well. Yeah. Wow. We've been going for quite a while here.
Oh God, like an hour and a half. I'm sorry, dude.
No problem. But let's say we bring this episode to a close.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I feel like we pretty much went over this episode with a fine-tooth comb. So
yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. So Alex, if people want to read more or just get more of your stuff, where can they do that?
Well, I appear in Jacobin fairly regularly, so you can check me out there. I'm going to be in the next 2 upcoming print issues that they have coming out. Long story behind that. And I'm also going to be in a couple other publications. There's a publication called The Common Reader that is published out of Washington University in St. Louis. I'm going to be in there coming up soon. Also Salvage, which is a British publication. I'm going to have an article there also. You can also find me at locustreview.com, where I'm an editor. Locust Review is a publication dedicated to radical, weird art, poetry, and fiction. So the weirder, the better. But also with sort of some unmistakable communism under it. So locustreview.com is where you can find me. And finally, I also have a blog called To Whom It May Concern, and you can find that just by going to Whom It May Concern has a dash between each word. So to-whom-so on and so forth .org. That's where I blog. So yeah, you can find me at any of those types of places. And I write a lot obsessively.
Awesome.
Please validate me for it.
Yes. All right. Very cool. All right. So yeah, thanks again for joining me on this episode. Yeah, we went deep on this one. I love it.
Did. And I don't know whether to be sorry for that or not. So.
No, I think it's awesome.
You have, this may be the first time in the Critic podcast that you get a glance into the inner mind of a critic. And again, I apologize to everyone for it.
Oh, all right. So that's going to do it for us here on It Stinks, the Critic podcast. Join us on next week's episode. Until then, have a good one. Thank you for listening to this episode of It Stinks, the Critic podcast. I'm your host, Brian Rubinow. Our theme song is by Brandon Beck. You can email the podcast at itstinkspod@gmail.com and find us on Twitter and Instagram at itstinkspod.